All right. Perfect. We're good to go. Once again, audience members, I apologize for the delay. But as you know, in today's webinar, today's countrywide we're experiencing internet issues. So due to that, we started a little bit late, but we are good to go now, hopefully. Um, Let me just go over today's session, what it's going to be about. All right. And before we begin, I'd like to introduce Education USA and USEFP before we begin. So Education USA is a global network under the U.S. Department of State made up of over 425 international student advising centers in more than 175 countries. We are your official source to U.S. higher education, and through Education USA, advisors work with advisees to provide updated, comprehensive, and unbiased information on higher education in the United States. In Pakistan, we are part of the United States Educational Foundation in Pakistan, which is also the Fulbright Commission in the country. USCFP also promotes mutual understanding between the people of Pakistan and the people of the United States through educational and cultural exchange. We have offices in Islamabad, Lahore, and Karachi, but we're available to any student that needs support or advising through Education Pakistan, through email or any other source, any other means, any other virtual means. You can find out more about us at www.uscfp.org. And I'm going to hand it over to Zulfiqar now in just a bit. A little bit of preview over what this session is going to be about. So, as many of you know, the Fulbright Scholarship is soon to open up again. The Fulbright Scholarship is a scholarship which you can apply for, and that scholarship covers all your expenses when it comes to studying in the United States. Zulfiqar, our instructor here today, he has been awarded the Fulbright Scholarship himself before, and he has studied from Columbia University. He's a graduate of Columbia University, and he's going to give you some insights about how to prepare for the GRE. He's an instructor himself. He's going to be focusing on the GRE math section today. And tomorrow, if you go on the same website, educationusa.pk, and you register, look at our upcoming events, Zulfiqar has another workshop tomorrow, and that is on the verbal section. The GRE is mandatory to apply for the Fulbright scholarship, and generally it's an added plus point on your graduate applications if you have a very good GRE score to show. With that, I'm gonna pause right there and I'm gonna hand it over to Zulfiqar. Zulfiqar, thank you very much for taking the time out to be here today. And over to you.
Thank you so much, Zubair. Nice to be here. I'm going to upload my presentation. I hope my screen is now visible in full screen.
Yes, I can see your screen.
Okay, so there was a little bit of overlap between my general or GRE presentation and the quant one. So I'll pick up a few slides from the first one and then we'll move to the quant section specific presentation. Good day, everyone. Let's start. So this is going to be a complete GRE orientation as well as a focus on the quant section of the GRE. Why it is important to have such sessions? It is mainly because the overall orientation gives you about information about GRE and what sections are there, what are the scoring patterns, many other aspects, what resources can you use. This helps you to get oriented and removes any uncertainties about the test, which is important to reduce your stress levels during the preparation part and especially the test taking day. I'm a brief profile about me. I'm a graduate of Cornell University. I've been a Fulbright scholar. I help people in GRE orientations and also a writing coach. I work in the development sector and I'm very passionate about youth development, skill development, and generally overall innovation system. My approach in terms of preparing for any test is that if I'm able to help you in improving the mold of your approach to solving questions. So in terms of, and the example that comes to my mind is like when you freeze water to prepare ice, the mold is going to give it the shape. So if your structure of verbal or your approach to maths question is a little bit skewed and away from the normal, then no matter how much you practice, there's going to be a lesser chance of you approaching the right one. And by improving the overall frame in which you cast these different things, that's going to help you much better. The GRE is a graduate record examination test administered by Educational Testing Service of USA. And let me quickly take a look. Zubair, I hope they have access to the chats.
They have access to the Q&A. So everyone, there is a Q&A box at the bottom of your screen. If you observe the bottom of the screen, there's an option for raising hand, there's chat, there's Q&A. So, and Zulfiqar, I think we'll do it the regular way. At the end of your presentation, we're going
Okay.
to open up the Q&A and then we'll go through the questions. Does that sound all right?
Yeah, that's fine.
Perfect. Yeah. So
Okay.
everyone go ahead and access the Q&A box. You can put in your questions there now, or you can wait till the end of the session, but your questions will be answered near the end of the session. All right. Thank you, Zulfikar. Over to you again.
Great. And in the meantime, if I'll have a couple of questions in between, will they be able to also respond?
If you have questions in the middle,
No, not the middle. If I have questions and they want to answer and I want to take some, so maybe let me. I have taken this Q&A one.
you
Why
have
is GRE important? If someone can give me an answer, uh, okay, it's important because quantitative reasoning. I will come to all those general questions. GRE is important because it assesses your skills which are required for the graduate level studies in USA and across the world. What they test is your readiness to the exams by evaluating your critical thinking, analytical writing, and problem solving abilities. So in that way, these are the skills which are required to pace up with a senior level graduate course at a good university in USA and in some other countries as well. And in terms of your problem solving skills, your readiness in terms of following the curriculum that's going on to pace up with that, all of those skills are very accurately tested in the GRE test in terms of times, the stress, the content, and your overall abilities in analytical and critical thinking ways. And it tests that by testing your abilities on the written materials analysis, reason quantitatively, and in terms of writing, how effectively you are able to pitch in your viewpoint and substantiate it. GRE has three sections. It has an analytical writing section, which comes at the start. Then it is a verbal reasoning or a quantitative reasoning, where whatever sections comes first. We'll see there are two parts in each of those. Each section has a specific time, and there is no more an unscored section. And with that, I'm going to tell you, if you are preparing from internet or some other materials or from help of some previous students, there has been a major change after September 2023. There's a new GRE, which is shorter. They have lesser sections. It's much shorter. It used to be a 3.5 hour to 4 hour session. Now it is 1 hour, 58 minutes. And there are 5 sections in total. The first one will be analytical writing. It is an analyze and issue task, which is a 30-minute task. You will get a general essay sort of a statement, and you will have to present your viewpoints and take a position. So they see how well you are able to position yourself and substantiate it, and your communication written skills are assessed in that. There's a verbal reasoning section, which has two sections in itself. The first is composed of 12 questions for 18 minutes, and the quantitative one gets a little higher time, 12 questions for 21 minutes. The second sections each have 15 questions, and they have different time limits, as you can see. Why these two sections and what's the total score? The total score is 260 to 340. It's a band of 80. In verbal reasoning, you have 130 to 170, quantitative reasoning 130 to 170, and then analytical writing 0 to 6. There's a single point increment in verbal and quant sections and a 0.5 increment analytical writing. That means you can have 3.5 out of 6 in analytical writing, and then 4, 4.5, and whatever. And the verbal and quant would always have a single point increment. So there will be no 135.5, there will only be 135 or 134 or 136. Those sorts of jumpings come in. Let me hide a little bit of this. Each section is independently scored, and there is a raw score which comes to your screen right after your test. And the analytical writing section is assessed by 2 human graders. So this takes time. It takes 2 to 3 weeks. The main points are the quant section and even the verbal have a single point increment. The scoring is based on your number of correct answers. However, the number of correct answers does not increase your score with the same increment. So if you have 5 questions correct and 6 question correction would not only increase your score by 1, it will increase by a substantial amount. And we'll talk about that. And there's a level of difficulty. So if the test is difficult, which is assessed in terms of overall performance in last 6 to 12 months of all GRE test takers, the difficulty level, if it is too skewed in one direction, your scores will change accordingly. You don't have to worry about that because usually this doesn't happen. The raw scores which comes to your screen right away are the ones that are usually the final scores. The important thing is that there is the score interpretation is most critical in terms of percentiles. So how many students are you performing better than? So if you're 90% percentile, a 90 percentile scorer, this means that you have performed better than 90% of the test takers in the last 1 year. Keep in mind that the important bracket is not 260 to 340. It is 130 to 170 because universities take quant and verbal reasoning sections very separately. So these are sort of 2 tests within one test. The combined score is helpful for your own friends and colleagues and this and that, but universities look at those scores in terms of section-wise division. Your raw scores comes immediately after you are done with the test, on the test day, right after there. And that raw score is usually the final score, but it takes some time to assess the difficulty level that other students have faced. And if there is some serious skewedness, then your scores might change. Those scores will be separated in terms of verbal and quant. Writing scores, of course, comes late. After seeing the screen, you will have 3 options. The first option is right, that you decide, okay, this score is something I don't like. So you can decide not to send your score right there. However, if you were improving and let's say you took a test a month ago and now your scores have improved, you can decide to send only your recent score. So the previous score will not appear. However, if your recent score was not good and the previous score was good, you don't have the option to send only the previous. You have the option to send both the scores. So you can tell the universities or Fulbright or some other scholarship committees that, hey, my previous score was, let's say, 310. Today, I've only received 308. So you can send both scores. But you cannot decide to send only the previous score. Once you have taken the test, you can only send recent or both, or you can decide not to send your scores at all. This is how the screen looks like on the rest, and this is just to give you an overview so that any confusions or queries or your time in terms of reading or assessing the test screen on the test day is not wasted. You can quit the test, you can exit a section, you can mark a question that, okay, I'll come back to this later, or I'll recheck or something. And then after you are done or in between, you can press review button, which is third over here on the screen. It will tell you, okay, these many questions were answered, not answered, and this one has been marked or not marked. Every other information about time, you can hide time, you can switch back between questions, you can start right from the last question, that's up to you. I would suggest go in sequence. However, if some questions you find difficult, you can just mark them and move ahead. I would highly recommend that you still randomly answer the question in any case, just in case your guesswork works for you. So these are all the options available. Quantitative reasoning section. It assesses your abilities in terms of uh, problem solving abilities, critical thinking. It uses the concepts of maths. It's not a math test as such. It's a quantitative reasoning, how well you can reason with numbers, and in terms of numbers as well, how well you can do the calculations, in how much time are you able to get the complex set assessed. So it's not a maths test. I'll give you one example. If I am going to be tested on my debating skills, and I go on stage, and the panelists tell me, okay, you have to do the speech in Japanese. But I don't know any Japanese. So my debating skills might be there. I don't know Japanese, so I'll score 0 on that. However, if someone has very low debating skills, but he or she is familiar with Japanese, maybe they will perform better. So it's more about having a basic awareness and understanding and knowledge of those maths concepts, but the actual concepts that are being tested are your quant skills. And for that, they cover arithmetic, algebra, geometry, and data analysis. You will have 4 primary kinds of questions. There will be a quantitative comparison. We'll come to that. There's a multiple choice questions. Always remember the multiple choice question, this term. Multiple choice is that there are 4 or 5 options and you have multiple options there for your answer. Usually we find it only one correct answer, but GRE also has questions where more than one options are there. So multiple choice questions select more than one or only one. And by the way, if there are, let's say, 4 correct options and you only pick 3, you are not going to get any credit for that, having those 3 questions correctly answered. So it's either a yes or no in terms of whether you have attempted the question correctly or not. There's no partial numbering. And there's a numeric entry question. And when I talk about this, you see quantitative comparison only has 4 options. We'll come to that. You will have 25% chance of having a guesswork working for you. A multiple choice single, there will be 5 options. You will have to pick one. There is a 20% chance. The chances get lower when there are multiple picking options. So A and B were the right answers. You could have picked A and C. You could have picked A and D. So all of those are wrong answers. You could have picked B and C. You could have picked C and D, whatsoever. All of those will not be helpful unless you pick exactly A and B if those were the correct answers. And for numeric entry, there is absolutely no guess points. For example, the answer is 12.5. A random answer can be 1, 2, 5, 50, 500, 3,000, whatsoever. But there are innumerable options. Even between 2 and 3, you can pick 2.1, 2.3. So you can never guess with that. Numeric entry questions are very, in terms, you have to be very specific in your answer. And the answer points are counted till 2 decimal points. Okay. Let me So these concepts, by the way, are basic elementary geometry level examples. In terms of geometry, your questions will be about lines, circles, triangles, quadrilaterals, and other polygons. You have to apply measure areas, find perimeters, volumes, or Pythagorean theorems or whatsoever. And you have to apply those in terms of having a good understanding of some of the formulas that are available. I'll talk about that in the later slide. I might have missed one slide in the previous one. These concepts, in terms of how detailed each of those, let's say, algebra or geometry aspects will be covered, are given in a guide called Math Review. Let me This is where you will find it. This math review document, which is available on the ETS website, you might require, recently they have added this layer of having a login just to have your some information available with them. Math review document, it's a PDF document which covers in entirety all of the concepts that will be tested and each concept to what depth it will be assessed. So you have to take a good look. So you don't have to go too deep on a topic which is not covered that deep, and you don't have to miss certain aspects which are actually covered. Okay, for some word problems which will also require some equations, let's take a pick on this. I would want people to use the Q&A, B, C, D, and E. Uh, we'll take 30 seconds on this. One thing with the multiple choice answers, usually when there is a single answer, single correct answer, we use these buttons we called radio buttons. They only pick one, unlike the check boxes, which can pick multiple check boxes. That's right. The answer option is C, which is $30. And your approach, now this is where I wanted to get you to. I'm trying to see if I can use the board. It might take a little bit. What it does is that whether you are able to see the question, not in mathematical terms just, but are you able to solve the problem by having whatever the information is available? And yes, that is doable. It is using mathematical concepts, but it is basically assessing your mental capabilities in terms of whether you can solve a problem and you can critically think. The simplest option would have been, as you can see, the options are $30 and then $40 or $20. There is a $10 gap between all those options. So you don't have to be very specific, and that's why the question Q itself says approximate cost. What was the approximate cost? So in 33 miles per gallon, that means for 10 times more, with the 10 gallons, you could run 330. And with those 10 gallons, the cost would have been 10 times 2.95, which is 29.5. So if you raise a little bit to 29.5, uh, uh, to a little higher value, you will still go to the same length of 330. The cost will be somewhere above $29.5, which in this case is clearly $30, and $40 would be a much higher jump. So $30 is the perfect option. How does kindly wait for your questions which are not relevant in between the questions, and then if you can write it with yourself first, and then towards the end we can, so that if we are focusing on one particular question, we can do that. Okay, in terms of equations, the algebraic ones, maybe a simple answer option is here. This is how you find it. Quantitative comparisons. There's a quantity which is given on left side, which is quantity A, and there's a quantity B. You have to compare them. Assume that there's no equation available on the top. Just bear with me for some time. Let's say there's no equation on the top. There's no other information, and it says compare quantity A with B. So quantity A is X, quantity B is Y. Since you do not know anything about what an X is, X can be 1000, X can be 33.5, X can be minus 33. It can be any value in the world. And same is true for Y. So you cannot compare. And hence the answer would be answer option D, which is that you are unable to find your answer without having more information. Okay, now you have this question. Y is equal to 2x squared plus 7x minus 3. Let's attempt that. And if you have your answers, if you can post that in Q&A. So you pick answer A if quantity A is greater, you pick answer B if quantity B is greater, the two quantities are equal, then you pick option C. So my point here is that you have to understand the equation. So these basic concepts, so you have you cannot say it's not a math test 100%. But there are mathematical concepts which are useful. If I can have answer options from. So even if you will be able to solve unless x and y are equal. So let's see on the right side if we can just have 2y square plus 7y. Does it make sense? No, you are unable to solve this equation without having any more information, and that's why the relationship cannot be determined. The option D is the right option. But uh, in some questions, you will have some cues which you will find useful. So there are answer options coming up with the B as well. You see, even if you find the values of X to some extent, you're not sure whether X is positive or negative or zero. So it can be any number on the number line, which is minus 1,000, minus 5,000, minus 5 lakhs, whatsoever. So the comparison would absolutely be of no use. Here's another one. It's about Kate spending some proportion of her income as mortgage payments for rent, you can say. And the rental payment or the mortgage payment is mentioned, not the total income. How would you attempt this question? By the way, take these options as A, B, C, D, and E, and then pick your answers. Uh, Only host can see the questions. Yeah, if you can please open the Q&A for students, they might start giving some answers around this. Zubair, is the option available?
The option for what? The Q&A option?
Yeah,
Yes, the questions were coming in. But for
yeah, I
this
understand.
question, I think for this particular question, I remember this question. I think you might need to give them a little bit more time for this question because this
Oh,
is
sure.
rather tricky.
Yeah, that's right.
All right, we have some answers coming in. Everyone, I think you need to keep in mind this is one of those questions in which you can select multiple answers. So there are multiple answers, which you need to write down in the Q&A box. Zulfikar, are you able to see some of the answers that just came in?
Yeah. I'm able to see.
Perfect.
I'm trying to see if I can use some medium. I'm trying to open Excel just to demonstrate uh, how to approach this question. So
Okay, no worries.
whiteboard option in the Zoom meetings is really not helpful.
I understand.
So I'll also request one more thing that as you can see, there will be participants who will have varying level of understanding about math concepts. So we will assume an average level of understanding and move to the explanations in some bits a little detailed for some people, maybe a little quicker for others. So it's just to try a balance. I'm trying to share my screen so that I can show you some Word document or Excel, which will be A and D, B and D, B, C, D, E, B, C, D, E, A and D. Okay. Are you able to see this Excel screen now? So you see,
Yes, we're able to see it.
okay, wonderful. Thank you, Zubair. You are helpful. Uh, we are saying that Kate is spending some amount. So it's more about having clarity on the question. Okay. If we come back to the question is very clearly saying that Kate is spending somewhere between 1/4 to 1/3 of her gross income, and nowhere is that gross income given. So, in terms of GRE's approach to questions, you need to see that there needs to be a mental clarity, a smoothness, a critical thinking approach, which is its testing. And hence, you have to be very clear that there is no option, there is no information about uh, uh, total income. Let's say we are saying income. Let's say X is your income, and you don't know that. This is something which your mind should be clear about. However, you know one thing about this: the mortgage payment is not only given, which is 13,470, but this is also 1/3 to 1/4 of your total income. And by the way, if it would have been 1/4, the maximum minimum, a minimum amount, 1/4 is less than 1/3, this means that you might have actually a much higher income, right? Because what you are now, this is fine. Let's say if it would have been 1/3, then the total income actually would have been, it's total income would have been like this, that you have to 13,470 being the rental payment, you have to multiply this by 3. This would give you the total income, which is 40,410. And in our options, 40,200 was the minimum. So you see, this is your minimum possible income. If you would have been a 1/4 portion of your income to the mortgage, in that case, the income would be exactly the same thing. However, now you have to multiply it by 4. So this is where your income will be shuffling. You see 880, the last option is 808. So the highest possible income of Kate would have been 153,880 if she would have been spending 1/4 of her income on the mortgage. So this option, the option E, the last option, is included in that range. So your income range is all you can tell from the given information is between 40,410 to 53,880. And with that bracket available, you have all correct options except the option A, which is less than the minimum possible that Kate would have been. And hence you pick the options B, C, D, E. And there were some options I was seeing in the Q&A which were saying B, C, D. So if you did not pick E, the answer gets wrong. And if someone who did not even look at this question, he or she will also get 0. If someone picked A only, which was completely wrong, they will also get 0. So there is no partial credit to that. However, your approach is important. This question is a medium level difficulty or slightly lower than that, but your approach is important. You just multiply the available mortgage with the 3 to get the possible minimum income, and with the 4 to get the possible maximum income, gross income of K. So indicate all such options. There will be a good clarity, by the way. You don't find it difficult once you will start practicing. And again, as I was saying, these options. Zubair, is my mouse is also visible when I
Yes, yes. So when you move your
Okay,
mouse, I can see that
great.
as well live.
That's great. So these are check boxes, right, participants? This is a check boxes. So check boxes also always have these options that you can pick more than one. However, if there would have been only one correct answer, these options can still come. But the correct answer will only be that right pick, the single pick. So it can give you a confusing question where only one option is correct, but they are giving you options that you can pick. Why these are tricky? You see, if a random guess would have been coming, it can pick five options: A, B, or C, or D, or E. It can also pick AB, AC, AD, AE. It can also pick BC, BD, BE. It can pick ABC. It can pick BCE. There are multiple options available to you. So the guess option, the guess chances become very less, and hence GRE is tricky with that. Okay, let me now come to this point. You see, this session is not to or to coach you on quant section itself. It is about how to approach these questions, how to prepare for it, and things like those. And hence, we will be talking in more general terms and in terms of approach to these questions. You see, there are many questions which come like the previous one. What do you understand by one third? What do you understand by one fourth? This depends. So this is testing your overall understanding, your mental frame of how you conceptualize a written statement, which is using numbers. And quant section becomes important since all of these fields all around are increasingly using data and numbers and things like those. When we say one, it is one whole, the whole in terms of decimal numbers, in terms of ratios. One means a whole thing, the whole itself. So when you say that I earn one times the income that XYZ is earning, that means I'm earning exactly the same. If I say I earn one by two of someone else's income, that means I'm earning half of it. So this is how you visualize that, okay, if total was this whole circle, half is just half, of course, and then one third, one fourth. So you're reducing. What was happening in the previous question is that it was saying if it was using one third of their income of the K to the mortgage, this blue portion was equating with 13,470 number. So that means the total income was somewhere around 40,400 or whatever. But if the total income total income was this circle and only one fourth was being used for mortgage, you see a much smaller portion as compared to one third is being utilized. That only means that if one fourth, this red, and this one third blue were equal, then in this case, the circle must be bigger, the total pie, and hence we had this um, range we were seeing 53,000 in terms of when you were using one fourth, right? So when you were using one fourth as your mortgage payment, the total income must have been higher because a smaller portion is again equating with this amount here. Okay, and one fifth and so. So if there's a glass which is one fourth or one fifth full, in terms of the full glass, if it is one fourth of this, the quantity is apparently in terms of ratio looks like this. So this is the total portion. This was the missing number. However, this is 3 times and this is 4 times. So you see the 3 times of this number, this X, is not even completing the glass. And the 4X is able to complete it. And hence the 4X was greater than 3X in the previous one. Okay, if one fourth is greater than one third, then we can conclude that the possible income range was between these two because one fourth was higher. This red circle, the overall circle was bigger, right? So in terms of algebra with this simple conceptualization, you can use these approaches, but you have to practice, understand from the different practices and the guides available if you're not too clear on these concepts. And moving on, you also have to have a good understanding in certain cases about the formulas. These become important. While you can solve these questions. In a couple of next slides, you will see how these formulas are important, even if you are able to do the calculations right there during the test. Having the understanding of formulas makes it much easier. For example, in terms of uh, these equations and the algebraic equations, uh, you have to understand these basic rules. And this is by the way, a copy-pasted image from the PDF document of math review that I was mentioning, that x power 0 is always equal to 1, x power minus 1 is actually 1 over x, or let's say x power a divided by x power b can be written this way or even this way. So all of these variations, and if x is power a and to the power b, it becomes ab, not a plus b or a square b or something of that sort. So you have to be on your toes to understand some basic formulas which do come in all those guides. We will be talking about the resource books and especially the PDF document of math review. You need to know these concepts. You need to be able to apply these concepts and make mathematical calculations. And based on that, your practice and rigorous time-bound practice will uh, will make you comfortable in the test, because even if you were able to recall a particular formula, let's say 5 minutes after the question was given, that is of very less use. Uh, Another example in terms of geometry, these formulas, how these sides equate in a 60, 60, 60. All these sides are, since all these angles are equal, the opposite sides are also equal. This is something you have to be conceptually clear, theoretically clear, and able to do the practice. So if side uh, A on AB is given as 2, you can immediately tell this must be 2, and the side AC in all should also be 2. And if this angle is falling just perpendicular to this line, then this must be 1, half of the 2, and this also must be 1, and this angles will change. And then the length of this line, perpendicular line BD, would be square root 3. How you come to that? You square 2 and you minus it from square of 1. So 4 minus 1 is 3, and then you square root it. But this comes with practice and patience. And then one pro tip here, which apparently looks very simple, but I have seen in my own experience from students preparing, they don't absorb or understand it at the proper level, which is, while you know this, right? In the practice-bound test, the time-bound test, you might falter. And important things will be in 2 steps. You need to understand the concept, even if it takes 30 minutes. If it takes 60 minutes, that's fine. Even on one question, spending that much of a time to understand all the concepts clearly and able to ask yourselves different questions beyond the actual question given, and be very clear on what you're talking about. And then moving on to that time-bounded test. So do not rush. Even if you practice some questions, you get a wrong answer, and there's a quick explanation available why it was wrong and what was the correct answer. Don't rush through it. Spend your time on that. Your mistakes should tell you that there is some problem in your approach to the questions. It can be your hurried approach, it can be your lack of good clarity on the concept itself, and many other aspects. So don't rush on with your wrong answers. Another tip that I will give you is that if you are not sure about which answer is correct, when you do the practice, if you find, let's say, answer C is correct, give it a confidence range. Let's say I believe 60% that my question answer is correct. And then let's say someone tells you if that's not the correct answer, what other option you would pick. And then you take that option and write what percentage of confidence you have that this option may be correct. Let's say the first option you gave 60% confidence, second option you gave 30% confidence. Now, there will be a serious problem if both of those options were incorrect. So you must delve too deep into that. And if your answer, one of those was correct, you need to practice more to see why you were not that confident while you were knowing, or at least believing yourself that, okay, I was thinking right. And these different figures also. So these questions become important. If I'm sit on a test and I'm not aware about these formulas, I can still find this square root to how it's coming up, but it will be very difficult and time consuming at that stage. So your understanding of these formulas and then practice around those, and then specific efforts around wrong answer picking or where your confidence was low, that will be the key. Okay, data analysis. There are questions around data analysis, and these are increasing day by day in the GRE questions, since all of these different fields are using a lot of data. So your understanding around data becomes very, very important. And these are some of the sample questions. We'll just try to quickly go through this and then conclude the session towards a couple of next slides. So there's an inventory. So this is very daunting. First of all of this graph will come, these tables will come, there will be some curve around. So it might get difficult. So your practice in this becomes important. There is a table available which has a business name, GKM, just pseudonyms. There's a percentage change from April to May, and then from May to June. Okay. So take, for example, business K. It increased by 5% in April to May, and then it decreased from May to June by 5%. The actual value of the business at April would be, so do you think the value of business K at start of April would be higher, or its value at end of June would be higher? At the start of April would be higher, or at the end of June would be higher? If I can have some comments in the Q&A. Start of April would be higher, will be equal. Yeah, that option is always there. April prices higher and June lower. Good. So conceptual clarity is important. Just without doing the plug-in figures, you can see that the April figures will be higher. Let's say the April value was 1,000. Start May and then June. So there was a 5% increase. This means you have to do 1.05. This is the multiplication you do with the actual number. And for reducing it, you have to do, which is actually 1 minus 0.05, which is 5 percentage points, which is 95 actually. So this is your, not 0.95% of the previous value, which is this. It will definitely be lower at this point. You see this 190, this 997.5 is lesser than the start value at April. So, and if you're clear about the concept, you don't have to do these plugins, no matter what you do. I just used Excel because you can use 400 to be the value. It will still be lower. If you do 500,000, you see the June value is 49,000, less than that. So the whole point is less than whatever the start was. So this conceptual clarity becomes very important. If the inventory B at the business K, if the value of the inventory of the business K was 30,000, so before you start to answer this question, you know that end of June value for K would be less than 30,000. And there are only two options in that range. And also, since there's only a minor change, it cannot be this low. It cannot be option A. So without using a calculator, and here is another tip. If you have a calculator option on your screen all the times in the quant section, but you do not have to use it all the times. It is your wise decision. So I can clearly tell it's option B. if we plug in 30,000. So this is your answer, right? Option B. And it had to be that because that 5% increase and then 5% coming back should make it almost same, but a little bit lower. So a little bit lower would have been 29,000 something, not like 22,000. So you don't have to use calculator. And this is where your confidence about having a good understanding around maths concepts become important, that this time that you spend, and students, just for, how do I make it a blank screen to make attention away from this? This is what happens. Your stress levels, there are a couple of things that happens. If you are not sure about the answer options, your concepts are a little weaker, you would have start plugging in all these values or trying all those numbers. That would have wasted time. If you were relatively better, you could have definitely be sure that, okay, these two options can be there, A and B. C was for those who are not very good at their concepts. This option can never be correct. Even if 0.005 would have been less, but it would have been less than 30,000. And these two were definitely wrong options. But even within these two, when I say that this approach, you had to do these two calculations to come to this and this, and to ensure to be sure that option A is wrong, takes away, let's say, 10 seconds. And 10 seconds in a GRE test are important. But what it additionally does is that it gives you a little bit of a stress of doing this extra work. This extra stress compiled over time and during multiple questions, which basically creates more anxiety in the test. So my point is that your good understanding of a concept, good practice, and be very sure about what you're going to pick is actually the right answer, and there are no uncertainty around it, helps you uh, in getting the test in a more comfortable manner, which gets you higher chances of correct options. We'll skip question 2 for now because the options available for resource preparations, let's talk about that. I'll quickly give you my advice or my viewpoints around that. I personally like a lot this Barron's GRE book, and you have to do a couple of things here. There is a concept by concept guidance in the Barron's book and in all other books, by the way. But I really like the simplicity and the clarity of the explanations, and I would highly encourage you to read those explanations, even if you are 10% unsure about whether I got my question correct or wrong. If you are unsure about your answer option pick, do definitely read the explanations around that. There are two full-fledged tests available, but also one thing to highlight here, since the pattern has recently changed and Pakistan doesn't get updated books immediately, so the second-hand bookshops would always have these previous full-fledged tests. This doesn't have any bearing on your practice test, so don't worry about that. It's just the pattern that has changed. The concepts remain the same. And there's a Princeton review. There's a 5-pound book. 5-pound book I also like. There are explanations I usually don't like much. In the online resources, you have Magoosh resources. This is the most authentic resources on the web, and their apps also are also very helpful. You can use this in small bite-sized approaches. There are paid versions of Magoosh, which are very, very helpful if you are too serious about it. I would encourage you to start with one of the books, understand the concepts, practice around the concepts, then mix the different concepts in the full-fledged tests so that you are able to jump from one concept to another and come back uh, to be sure that randomly, if any concept is being asked around, you are able to go to the questions. However, I'll be cautious about one thing, this last point, be careful with the online material. A lot of, you see why people put these materials or questions or practice help things free on the website. They want to track more, have more traction around their website. So they will either give you very simple questions, or they can also have very difficult questions just to make you feel that, okay, they are the best resources available, but that's not the case. GRE is a very specific test, and their difficulty levels are very much gauged. So I would suggest that do not randomly pick questions on the web unless you are very sure about what difficulty level a certain concept is being judged on GRE. Common gap areas, lack of conceptual clarity in the quant. I'm pretty sure about this. This is the most problematic area. You see, there are multiple average or questions related to percentages and averages. These are very general concept. Be very sure that for an question around averages, the simple concept of total divided by the number of total items multiplied by, oh, sorry, two numbers divided by the total number of items will give you an average. This conceptual clarity, this foundational clarity is the key for getting questions right. And people do lack in that. I have particularly found it demonstrated in the probability questions. They look very daunting, but they are not if you are very good, you have a good clarity on the concept that what are the possible chances of certain event divided by the total available options. For a dice, it is 1 by 6. For a coin, it is 1 by 2. And all of your difficult questions will always ultimately be decided by that basic formula. And the second issue that comes is that you had a tendency to find a question that it will be actually asking this. Maybe it is asking the reverse of it. Which of the following cannot be the option? Which of the following is this or that? So be very sure about reading the question correctly. Do not rush through overthinking and over calculations. You have this option of marking or leaving a question. So do that if you are spending too much time around skipping weak areas. You are practicing something, you are skipping weak areas. No, don't make just that question attempted correctly or have a whole concept clear around that. Take out a good time around that. Random practice, abrupt practice, not help. It does not help. You have to do initially, you can do that, but later on, you have to be very structured. Time management techniques. So you do practice till the end of the test day, without timer. That is not helpful. And the test day hitches. You were not well prepared, you were awake for a long time, you had a heavy meal, you were tired, and things like that. So don't do that. I would ideally suggest you to have a 4 to 5 hour sleep, gap between your waking up and the test time. Do not make any attempts to attempt questions on the test day or even one day before the test. Just go easy. Maybe you can just nibble a couple of questions here and there. Do not stress out. How you should plan. I think we are moving away from the structure. And Zubair, if you can tell me if we should be skipping because we are done with this mostly.
Yeah, so I
We
think
can
in
cover a couple of these things tomorrow.
right, yeah. So if you just want to take some quick, maybe we'll end at 4:10 or 4:11. So if you want to take, if anyone had some other questions regarding the GRE, some questions which I told you to maybe hold off till the end, now would be a good time to ask any questions. Zulfiqar is available for the next few minutes, and if you can put in your questions now, he
Please.
would be glad to answer them. So go ahead and type your questions in the Q&A box for anything related to the GRE.
The GRE results immediately come up, the raw scores, but the official scores come 2 to 3 weeks after you attempt the test, which will include analytical writing score as well. The raw scores will most likely be your actual score. So you can, for your knowledge, the raw score is a good enough score. It all depends how much time a GRE prep should take. No, if you are good with a lot of concepts, maybe it will take 1 month. If you're not good with your concepts, it can take 3, 4 months, 5 months. And how much time per day you are giving, how much time per week you are giving, that's what decides. The Fulbright questions can be answered later. All of the material on the Fulbright and the USEFP applications is available on the website.
Just for everyone wondering, I'll just answer this question because a lot of people are asking this. The Fulbright application will open sometime early December. So just visit the USEFP website. Sometime early December, the Fulbright application will open.
Okay. There are a couple of questions around Lincoln Corner. Lincoln Corner does not sell books. It's an amazing resource because there are so good quality, high quality printed materials of different materials that you can pick. GRE books available, and you can go and study them and do practice from in the Lincoln Corner library centers. You cannot buy from them. Mm, DPT graduates. DPT, I'm not sure what DPT is. The fields which are eligible are pretty clear, and almost all fields are eligible, by the way. Can we apply for the Fulbright? More of these are. What's the frequency? Oh, yes. The GRE test is taken, the frequency of GRE test, they are taken every day, all around the year. However, during the peak hours and peak days, when the scholarship timings or admission timings are coming closer, it's difficult to get a scheduled or desired slot or any slot at all. So you should book too much in advance. And there's an option once you enroll, you can attempt for mock tests. And I would highly recommend you. There are a couple of other things which general GRE orientation session would have covered. So how many weeks we need to prepare? Your preparation time depends on your current level and how much time per day you are willing to wait. The calculators are allowed. There are calculators are allowed only in the, yeah, two important points. Calculators are only available on the screen. You will not have to bring your own calculator. You are not allowed to bring in your own calculator, first of all. Secondly, for me, for example, I do a lot of scribbing, pen notes. You only get two sheets, and you do a lot of practice on that. If you are too like wide written, some things your 2 pages will get over. You will have to raise your hand across the glass wall. Some administrator will look at you. They will come to you, ask you what you need. You will ask for two more papers, and then they will go back. They'll come back 2 papers. I would recommend you to use your sheets wisely, make boxes, and try to write in small font. There does, oh yes, there's a section level adaptability in the test. So your first section, how well you performed in that, if you performed really well, your second section of that particular domain, verbal or quant, will become difficult, and that will decide. So for one score, there's no formula that for one score you need these many questions to be answered correctly, or one particular answer correct would get you to raise your score by 2 points or 3 points. It all depends. If for example, I attempted a section one of quant really well, that means that the section two will be sure that my range is definitely above 130, definitely over 140, definitely around 150 or above that. So the second section of that particular quant would decide my score between, let's say, 155 to 170. So my answer options around that would be different. But if I performed very low on my first section, the second section will decide my score just between 130 to, let's say, 145. And how I perform in the second section will decide whether on the upper side of that range or on lower side of that range. That's a whole new debate, by the way. So I think Zubair, mostly these are GRE, these are Fulbright questions now, so we can take off, and then tomorrow maybe some of these students can have more information around the verbal and other aspects.
Yes, Zulfiqar, thank you again. Thank you very much for this webinar, taking out the time. To everyone else in the audience members whose questions were not answered, you can
Yeah.
come back and sign up for the next GRE workshop, which is tomorrow. Tomorrow, Zulfiqar will be rejoining us again, and he'll be going over the verbal section. So be sure to register for that. Because as you know, the GRE, there's two sections, quantitative and verbal. The verbal section will be going over that tomorrow. Hopefully the internet situation will be better tomorrow. I would assume that the disruption that we have today is limited to today only. Hopefully tomorrow should be better. But if not, then just wait a little bit in the lobby before we start the session, right? But hopefully tomorrow we should be off to a smooth start exactly at 3 p.m. With that, everyone have a great evening. Zulfiqar, thank you again for taking out the time.
Yeah, thank you so much everyone for coming, and thank you Zubair for coordinating it so well.
No problem, right? Everyone have a great evening.
Thank you. Thank you.